They say love is blind, but no one ever tells you what happens when love regains its sight. My name is Amina Usman, and this is the story of how I uncovered my husband's secret life. A life so twisted and hidden. It shattered everything I believed in. This is not a tale of love lost, but of truth discovered and the justice that followed. For 12 years, I believed I had everything. Our home in Kaduna was modest but filled with warmth. Sunlight filtered through cream-colored curtains each morning. The sound of our children's laughter echoed through the walls, and the scent of cinnamon tea often lingered in the air. To anyone who visited, our family looked like a portrait of happiness, painted perfectly with devotion and trust. I met Suleiman Usman at a family's wedding when I was just 23. He was 6 years older than me, tall, with a confident glance and eyes that held a softness that made you feel seen. He was working with the Federal Ministry of Works in Abuja, a steady government job that came with its fair share of responsibilities and long hours. But he made time for me. He visited every 2 weeks during our courtship, often driving hours just to take me to my favorite suya spots or to walk through the Kaduna Mall, hand in hand, discussing dreams for a future we hadn't yet built. He proposed beneath the bougainvillea tree in my father's compound, slipping a gold ring onto my finger as my family looked on with pride. We married within a year. Suleiman was the kind of husband who knew how to make you feel cherished. On our wedding night, he held my hands in his and whispered, "I promise to protect your hearts like my own." For years, I believed him. Our two children came within the first 5 years of marriage. Miriam, our spirited girl with her father's eyes, and Hamza, a quiet thinker who always asked questions about how the world worked. They adored their father, clinging to him every weekend he returned from Abuja. Every Friday evening, the kids would wait by the window, eyes scanning in the road for his car, and each time it appeared, they would scream in delight. Suleiman never came empty-handed. New toys, clothes, sometimes chocolates from duty-free, even though he haven't traveled abroad. He was always generous. With time, I adjusted to the long-distance marriage. He explained it was best this way: the cost of relocating the family to Abuja, the disruption to our children's schooling. Soon, he would say, I will apply for a transfer closer to home. But soon never came, and I never asked too many questions. Why would I? I had everything I thought I ever wanted: a hardworking husband, a loving father, a faithful man, or so I thought. It was an ordinary Friday morning. The scent of akara sizzling in the pan filled the kitchen, and Miriam's laughter floated in from the backyard as she chased Hamza around the garden. I was packing Suleiman's weekend bag for his return trip to Abuja, just as I had done every Sunday night for the past 11 years. His shirts were freshly ironed, his cologne neatly packed, and his favorite leather slippers placed carefully at the bottom. As I reached into the side pockets to check for his shaving kit, something caught my eye: a folded piece of paper, crumpled slightly like it had been stuffed in a hurry. I smoothed it and read the printed text: Mega Mart, Victoria Island, Lagos. 86,200 naira, paid with debit card, 4th of June, 9:37 a.m. I blinked, my mind taking a moment to register what I was saying. Lagos? A strange flutter stayed in my chest. It had to be a mistake. Suleiman always told me he worked in Abuja. If he had gone to Lagos, surely it was a business trip. Maybe he forgot to mention it. I placed the receipt back carefully, forcing myself to breathe, to think logically, but something in me had shifted. The quiet hum of doubt had found its way in. Later that evening, I tried to ask casually while we sat on the couch watching the news. Work must be stressful lately, I said, handing him a glass of zobo. He took a sip. Always is, but I manage. Have they sent you anywhere else lately? Like Lagos? My tone was deliberately light, nonchalant. His eyes stayed on the screen. No, not really. Just Abuja, same old office life. And there it was, a lie, delivered without a flinch. My heart sank, but I didn't press him further. That night, I lay awake next to him, his steady breathing beside me, and wondered how many other lies he had told so effortlessly. The doubt grew stronger the next weekend. It was a Saturday afternoon. Suleiman was in the bathroom, and his phone, charging on the dresser, buzzed with a message. I would never have looked before. I had never felt the need, but something compelled me now. I picked it up and glanced at the screen. My love, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. My husband, the kids miss you. The phone slipped from my hand and landed on the bed with a soft thud. I stood frozen, the room suddenly cold despite the afternoon sun filtering through the curtains. My mind raced with 100 questions, none of them making sense. Who was she? What kids? When Suleiman came out of the bathroom moments later, humming to himself, I forced a smile and pretended nothing had happened. My entire body trembled with the effort, but my silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. I needed to know more before I acted. That night, while he slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. The shadows danced across the walls, and I tried to hold on to the life I thought I had, but it was already slipping away. The next morning, a quiet war had begun inside me. I moved through the house like a ghost, preparing breakfast, braiding Miriam's hair, checking Hamza's homework, while my mind plotted something I had never considered before. I was going to follow my husband. It wasn't something I decided lightly, but after the receipts, after the message from my love, I could no longer sit in the dark, waiting for the truth to reveal itself. I had to shine the light. Suleiman, as usual, left on Sunday morning. He kissed the children on their foreheads, hugged me tightly, and promised to call once he arrived in Abuja. I watched him drive off, then turned immediately to my friend and neighbor, Hadiza. I need a favor, I told her. Can you watch the kids for a few hours? She studied my face, her brow furrowed. Amina, is everything okay? I nodded slowly. Not really, but it will be. She didn't ask more, just hugged me tightly. Go. I hired a local driver, Ibrahim, someone discreet. We waited 2 blocks down the road, hidden behind a line of parked cars. My pulse thundered in my ears as we followed Suleiman's black Toyota Camry at a distance. Hours passed as we drove, but not toward Abuja. The road signs began to change. South, toward Lagos. My heart twisted tighter with each kilometer. By the time we reached the outskirts of Victoria Island, dusk had begun to fall, painting the skies in hues of deep orange and fading gold. The Lagos traffic was merciless, but I didn't scare. My eyes never left his car. Finally, he turned into a quiet, well-kept neighborhood, lined with flowering trees and trimmed hedges. He slowed in front of a cream-colored duplex with maroon roofing and a small fenced compound. And then I saw her. She came out of the house laughing, barefoot, her wrapper tied loosely around her waist. Her skin glowed in the evening light, and her smile, that smile, it was the kind of smile a woman gives a man she adores. Suleiman stepped out of the car, and she ran into his arms like she had been waiting all week, her hands around his neck, a kiss to his cheek, And then 3 children came tumbling out of the house. "Daddy!" they cried in unison, wrapping around his legs. I felt the world tilt beneath me. My stomach lurched. He scooped one of them into his arms. A little girl no older than 5. She had the same dimpled smile as Miriam. My throat closed. I sat in that car, frozen, watching a version of my husband I had never known. A man who had built a life parallel to mine, a home, a wife, children, laughter, love. Another version of everything I thought was unique between us. We drove back to Kaduna in silence. I don't remember speaking. I barely recall breathing. My head dropped. My eyes stung. I stared out of the window, letting the night blur into a fog of betrayal. How could I not have seen it? How many birthdays he had missed, claiming work commitments while he was here with them? How many lies had he told me as he held me close at night, whispering sweet nothings into my ear? Was I just the other woman? The thoughts burned. By the time we pulled into my compound, the early morning call to prayer was rising in the distance. I stepped into my house, kissed my children as they slept, and collapsed on the rug in the sitting room, trembling with rage. The questions roared inside me, but one rose above them all. Who was I married to? The following Friday arrived like a dark cloud hanging over my home. Everything looked the same. Hamza was building a fort with cushions. Miriam danced around in her princess gown, but I was no longer the same woman. I functioned because I had to. I smiled for my children. I responded to neighbors. I cooked dinner, but inside I was still waiting. Suleiman called in the afternoon. "Sweetheart, I'm just leaving the office now," he said, his voice smooth and warm. "Should be home in about 4 hours. Anything you want me to bring?" Bring? I wanted to scream down the phone. Bring what? Another lie? Another kiss tainted by betrayal? No, I said simply, "Drive safe." I hung up. Then I went into the bedroom. I laid out everything I had on the table. The shopping receipt from Lagos, the phone screenshot I had secretly taken while he was in the shower last week, and most damning of all, a printed photo Ibrahim had helped me capture from the car. Suleiman, arms around the woman in Lagos, a child perched on his hip. I sat and waited. When I heard the gates open and the familiar sound of his car, my pulse quickened. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I was ready. The front door opened and he stepped in, carrying a bag of suya and smiling as if nothing had happened. "Look who brought your favorite," he called out to the kids, who squealed in delight and ran to him. He looked at me, then paused. Something in my expression must have told him everything. "Amina," he said slowly, letting the bag down. "Is everything all right?" I said nothing. Instead, I picked up the photo and handed it to him. He stared at it, blinked. His hand trembled slightly. I reached out for the receipts, placed it in front of him, then the screenshots. "And finally," I said, my voice clear and low, "who is she?" He didn't speak. His eyes darted from the photo to my face, searching for an escape, a soft place to land. But there was none. "Answer me," I said. "Don't lie. I followed you, Suleiman. I saw her. I saw them. Your other family." He sat down heavily on the couch, as though 12 years of deception had finally come crashing down. "I never meant for you to find out like this." I laughed, but it was hollow. "So you meant for me to never find out at all?" "Amina, please. Don't you dare," I said sharply. "Don't you dare blame this on a rough patch. You chose to lie. You chose to build 2 lives. You looked me in the eyes and promised love, loyalty. I was trying to provide for both families." "Provide?" I hissed. "You think this is about money? You shattered my life, Suleiman. You let me raise our children in a house of lies. He reached for my hand. I pulled it away. I love you, he said weakly. No, I said. You love control. You love comfort. You love getting what you want without paying the price. I stood, my hands trembling but my voice firm. You betrayed me. You betrayed them. You have lived like a king, walking through two kingdoms, but now it's time you answer for it. I walked out of the room, heart pounding, knowing what I had to do next. The morning after the confrontation, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, staring at a woman I barely recognized. Her eyes were hollow but fierce, her lips pressed tightly to hold back waves of pain. Her hijab was pinned neatly, as always, but beneath the fabric, something had changed. I was no longer someone's wife. I was a woman at war. That day, I left the house with a small black handbag and a folded piece of paper that felt heavier than any burden I had carried before. It was a petition for divorce. Divorce. The word felt like betrayal on my tongue, yet it was the only honest part left. I met with a lawyer that morning, someone who had been recommended by my cousin, a quiet, sharp woman named Barrister Halima Musa. She listened without interruption as I poured out my story, every ugly detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. You know, she said softly, most women wouldn't dare. I know, I replied. She nodded slowly. Then let's begin. The next few weeks were a blur of legal documents, whispered phone calls, and quiet strength. Suleiman was stunned when the court summons arrived. He came to the house that same evening, eyes red, shoulder hunched. You are doing this? He asked, voice cracking. Yes. Amina, please, let's talk. Not in front of strangers, not with the courts. There's nothing left to say. But what about the children? I am doing this for the children, I said, so they grow up knowing what respect looks like. His eyes filled with tears. He reached for me again. Amina, I never stopped loving you. I stepped back. I don't need your love, I said coldly. I need truth, and you don't know how to give that. Our first court hearing was in a small, echoing room with a single ceiling fan that clicked with every rotation. Suleiman came in wearing a well-pressed kaftan, pretending calm. I wore my finest abaya, not out of vanity, but as armor. He tried to argue. He said he loved both families. He said polygamy was part of our faiths. But I wasn't arguing religion. I was arguing deceit. It's not about the number of wives, I told the judge calmly. It's about the number of lies. Halima presented every document, receipts, photos, messages, my journal entries, even a letter from Suleiman's second wife in Lagos, who had now learned about me through her own storm of betrayal. She didn't know either, I added. He married her claiming he was single again. The judge's expression hardened. When the gavel finally struck, the ruling came like wind after a storm. Suleiman would split his assets equally between both families. Full custody of my children would remain with me. He was to provide monthly child support and relinquish ownership of our Kaduna home to me. Suleiman looked stunned, as if for the first time his double life had consequences. Outside the courthouse, I stood with my lawyer as the sun blazed overhead. It was hot, but I felt light. Halima turned to me. You did what most women are too scared to do. I didn't have a choice, I said. It was either live with lies or finally live with truths. And the truth, no matter how painful, was now mine. For a man like Suleiman, image was everything. He had built his life like a grand house with glittering windows, respectable career, two families in different cities, and a reputation as a dutiful husband and father. But now the walls were crumbling and the world was watching. The day after the judgment, word began to spread. In Kaduna, the whispers came first. Aunties who used to praise Suleiman's dedication now changed their tone, speaking in low voices over steaming bowls of tuwo. Can you believe it? 12 years. Poor Amina. She was so quiet, so obedient. Who would have thought? In Lagos, it was worse. I didn't know her name until later. Zainab, the woman from the house, the one with the soft smile and three children of her own. She called me. Her voice was quiet, trembling. I didn't know, she said. He told me he had divorced his first wife before marrying me. I was never divorced, I said. There was a silence. Then he told me you were unstable, that you left him. I closed my eyes. We were together the entire time. I said flatly. I heard her breathe heavily through the phone. I don't know what to do. I can't tell you what to do, I said gently. But you deserve the truth. So do your children. She thanked me and hung up. 3 days later, she left him too. Suleiman's life began to implode. His second wife moved out of the house in Lagos, taking the children with her. She filed for custody and joined my case to seek her own legal protections. When the ministry, where Suleiman worked, caught wind of the ongoing court battles and the accusations of bigamy and fraud, they quietly began an internal investigation. I heard through a colleague that he had been placed on administrative leave. No title, no job, no wives, no homes of his own, the king of two castles, now without a throne. And yet, despite it all, I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel victorious watching him fall. There was no gloating, no revenge dances in my living room, just a quiet peace. It was over. I no longer waited for the sound of his car. I no longer listened for lies wrapped in his sweet words. My mornings belonged to the sunlight again. My evenings were for reading books with Miriam and helping Hamza build toy pyramids out of blocks. The silence in the house no longer felt empty. It felt full of truth, of freedom, of healing. One afternoon, as I walked Miriam home from school, she asked me, Mama, is Baba coming home this weekend? I paused. The hurt surfaced, but not like before. No, sweetheart, I said gently. Baba lives somewhere else now. She looked up at me with wide eyes. Why? I knelt in front of her because sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt the people they love. And when that happens, it's okay to say enough. It's okay to protect our hearts. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay, but I still love him. I smiled and touched her cheek. That's okay too. I had spent over a decade as someone's wife, someone's mother, someone who fits into the quiet corners of another person's dreams. Now, I stood in the center of my own. It didn't happen overnight. Healing never does. At first, I moved slowly, unsure of how to fill the gaps Suleiman left behind. My days were quieter, yes, but also emptier in places I didn't expect. There were moments I caught myself setting aside food for him or reaching out for my phone to tell him something small, a joke the children made, news from a neighbor. But in time, the silence became comforting. The house, though changed, was mine. Every inch of it, every decision, every breath. One morning, I stood in the kitchen watching the sunrise paint golden light across the tiles, and I realized I was no longer waiting for anything. I was living. It started with the garden. The space behind our house had long been neglected. Suleiman used to call it a waste of time. But I had always dreamed of something more. So one afternoon, with the children playing under the mango tree, I picked up a hoe and started clearing the weeds. It was hard work. My hands ached. The sun was relentless, but it felt good, honest, grounding. By the end of the week, tiny green shoots peeked through the soil. Vegetables, herbs, hope. Neighbors began to notice. Some stopped by to admire the progress. One woman even asked if I could help her start her own garden. I laughed. I am not an expert. You are growing life, she said. That makes you one. Her words stayed with me. 2 months later, I started a small home garden business, Amina's Patch, organic produce, herbs, and decorative flowers for homes and schools. My cousin helped me build a logo, and Hadiza created a social media page. To my surprise, others began to trickle in, then more. Then schools called, asking if I could help teach children to grow their own plants. It wasn't just a business, it was therapy, rebirths. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was building with my own 2 hands. One evening, I sat with the children on our porch, sipping kunu and watching them chase fireflies. Hamza turned to me. Mama, are you happy? The question caught me off guard. I looked at him, so serious, so thoughtful, and I answered truthfully. I am, I said. Not every day, but more and more, yes. He nodded like a little old man and went back to catching glowing insects. People began to notice the change in me. I laughed more. I looked people in the eye when I spoke. I wore colors I had long kept buried in the back of my wardrobe: bright blues, bold reds, sunny yellows. I realized something profound as the months passed. You don't heal by going back to what broke you. You heal by planting something new where pain once lived. And that's exactly what I was doing. One seed, one laugh, one morning at a time. There are some things too heavy to say out loud. Some truths that settle better on paper, where they don't need to be answered, just acknowledged. In the quiet hours of the night, after the children had fallen asleep and the house hummed in peace, I began to write, not to send, but to release. These letters were not for anyone's eyes but mine. They were for the parts of me that needed to speak and be heard. To my children, Miriam and Hamza, my dearest loves, if you are reading this one day when you're older, I want you to know something. None of this was your fault. You were the light that carried me through the darkest days. Your laughter reminded me that joy still existed. Your hugs stitched the torn parts of my soul back together. When your father left, I know it was confusing. I saw it in your eyes, heard it in your questions. Why is Baba not coming home? Did we do something wrong? No, my loves, you did everything right. I made a choice, a hard one, to protect you from a house built on lies. I chose truth. I chose peace. I chose to show you what strength looks like when it stands alone. You may grow up and face heartbreak of your own. If that day ever comes, I want you to remember what I did. You are never powerless. You are never voiceless. And you never have to stay where love does not honor you. Love, Mama, and to Zainab. Sister, I do not blame you. We were both misled by the same man. You loved him because you believed his promises, just like I did. We were strangers once, and yet we lived parallel lives, both raising children, both believing we were the only ones. I used to wonder if I should hate you, if I should be angry that you had what I thought was mine. But with time, I realized you were just as betrayed as I was. We are not enemies. We are survivors of the same deceit. And if you ever read this, I hope you are healing. I hope your children are safe. And I hope you are building something real, something yours. Forgive yourself for believing him. I have forgiven myself too. Amina. And to Suleiman, I will never forget you. Not because I still love you, but because you taught me what love should not feel like. You were my first everything, my first home, my first heartbreak, my first lesson in how a beautiful lie can wear the marks of devotion. I trusted you completely, And you broke that trust over and over, while still looking me in the eyes and calling me your queen. You built two kingdoms and crowned yourself ruler of both. But you forgot that queens are not ornaments. We are fire. You lost not because I destroyed you, but because the truth finally arrived. I don't wish you pain, Suleiman. I wish you growth. I hope one day, when you are alone with your regrets, you will understand the weight of the choices you made. But I won't be there to help you carry them. I am not the same woman who once waited by the window every Friday evening. She is gone, and in her place stands someone stronger, Amina. When I finished writing the letters, I folded them gently and placed them in a box under my bed. They were no longer burdens. They were proof that I had walked through fire and came out whole. Rain came on a Sunday morning, soft at first, light taps against the windows, a gentle breeze through the garden, but soon it poured, heavy, cleansing, wild. I stood at the back door watching it fall, barefoot on the wet tiles, the scent of earth rising in waves. I wasn't sad. I wasn't lonely. I was alive. It had been nearly a year since the divorce, since I stood in that courtroom and chose myself, since I picked up the shattered pieces of my life and began to arrange them into something new, something honest. There were still hard days, of course, moments when a song, a smell, or a question from the children stirred the memories again, but they no longer held power over me. They were chapters, not cages. Miriam was thriving in school, bold and confident. Hamza had started building his own mini garden beside mine, declaring he wanted to grow the biggest carrots in Kaduna. Our home was filled with color, real color, not just paint or plants, but laughter, music, peace. I was no longer living half a life. I was no longer waiting for someone who never truly arrived. In losing Suleiman, I found something far greater, myself. The final lesson: life will sometimes hand you betrayal dressed as love, but truth, even when it hurts, is never your enemy. I learned that silence is not always strength, and that sometimes walking away is the loudest declaration of dignity you can make. I learned that you do not need to suffer to be seen, nor break to be whole. And most importantly, I learned that you can start over at any age, after any heartbreak, in any circumstance. We have come to the end of my story, but maybe it's just the beginning of yours. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between what was easy and what was right? What did you learn about yourself in the process? I would love to hear from you in the comments. If this story touched you, inspired you, or made you reflect, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful, emotional, and interesting stories. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, stay you. The end.